Hello everyone, my name is Maureen Flynn and I'm a member of the Quality and Patient Safety Directorate team. Welcome to this QPS webinar, the first of our autumn series 2021. Today is a really special day as we kick off the series. We are focusing for this session on a whole system approach to improving quality and safety. Before we get started, some brief housekeeping. We aim for this webinar to be as interactive as possible. We hope you can hear via your computer. Don't worry if not, you can dial in using a telephone number. The event number is posted in the chat box and you'll see in the chat box the details if you prefer to listen over the phone. Mentioning chat box. We look forward to seeing your comments throughout the webinar. So the chat box is open. It's the blue speech bubble on the bottom right of your screen, highlighted by a red arrow on this slide. Make sure when you're sending messages to select everyone so that we can all see the messages in the chat box. Do keep your questions coming. This session is being recorded so that you can listen back, and also we can share with those not able to join us today. The recording and slides will be available on our QPS YouTube channel, which you can access via the HSE website. Please do engage with us on Twitter. You can tag us at Dr Amar Shah, at QPS Talk Time, hashtag QIreland. So to get started, we'd like to hear from you, and we invite you to include in the chat box your name and where you're joining us from today, and one word to describe how you're feeling. I'm going to pause for a little second to allow you to enter the details in the chat box. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for posting in the chat box where you're joining us from. So we move on to the next slide, Naomi. We're delighted to have Amar Shah with us, a consultant forensic psychiatrist and chief quality officer at East London NHS Foundation Trust, a Q member and international leader in quality improvement. In conversation with our own Dr. John Simons, consultant paediatrician and member of our Quality and Patient Safety Directorate team. But before we go over to John and Amar, we'd like to share a new way for QPS Talk Timers to connect together. We're delighted today to be launching the Q Ireland Network Map, an excellent way to nurture, connect with other people who are involved in QPS, hear about their success stories and learn about their challenges. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Matthew Hill, Insight Evaluation and Research Manager at Q. Q have supported us in designing and testing the map that you're going to see a little more of now. Thank you, Matthew, who's going to briefly share highlights of the map. Over to you, Matthew.
Great, thank you very much, Maureen, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Maureen says, we're really pleased and excited to be fully launching the Q Ireland Network Map today. It really aims to build a live, dynamic and searchable visualisation of those involved in healthcare quality improvement across Ireland and log the connections between them. So we would absolutely love you to join the map and be able to use the information on there to build your own connections and lead on to collaborations. The map is hosted and managed by HSE, and it was co-designed and developed with the Q community and a group of 18 improvers to really try and make sure that the information that's on there is as meaningful and useful as possible for you all. So we tested it with a few different groups over the last few months, including trying to kind of work around the cyber attack and we're now launching it more widely today. As you can see from the slide, so far we have 142 people on there with 282 connections logged between them. So the map is really starting to kind of take shape, but we're hoping to see a lot more of you on there over the coming weeks and months. So how do you get yourself on the map? You can visit the HSE website where the map is hosted. I'll just post a link in the chat box now, and we'll also share the link after the call today as well. So if you don't want to be distracted from the rest of the webinar. You sign up there on the website, and then you'll be sent your unique link to access the map. It'll ask you to enter a bit of information about yourself, including some professional characteristics, your contact information so that others can reach out to you, as well as some questions around your particular areas of interest within QI, as well as an opportunity for you to log any existing connections you have with others who are already on the map. That link is always live, so if your details change or you have new connections, you can go in through that link and update the information. As with anything like this, the more up-to-date and accurate the information on there, the more kind of useful it is for us all to use. So once you're on the map, so how do you actually use it to its full potential? Well, I think the best thing to do is to get in there and have a go at playing around with it. You can filter the map by different roles, regions, organisation types, as well as, crucially, the different areas of interest related to QI that people on the map have. So that means you can really hone in on those people who you kind of need to and want to connect with. You can see on the slide that small group there has been filtered around those who have an interest in digital technology. So there's kind of like a ready-made, well-connected group already on the map in that area of interest. Obviously, there's some other areas of interest where the groups aren't so well connected yet, but we hope that the map will kind of stimulate the connections between those groups. Interestingly, you can obviously also use it for bridging across different areas of interest. So you may be interested in digital technology, but really want to build bridges with those who are interested in patient and public involvement. Well, again, you can use the map and the filters on the map to be able to work out who best to connect with around that. Once you've identified someone that you want to connect with, you can just click on their name and all of their profile information and details come up on the left-hand side of the map. And you can use, again, all of that information to make those connections in the most meaningful way. So once you're on there, you can get building your connections and collaborating. As I say, please do sign up and give it a go. It is a pilot. And I guess in the spirit of improvement, we're really keen to hear from people on the map, how they're using it, how they're getting on with it, and how it could be improved. So please do message me any questions or suggestions that you do have. I'll pop my email address in the chat now. Otherwise, thanks very much, and back over to you, Maureen.
Thank you very much, Matthew. We're really looking forward to using and seeing the map grow. That's a very exciting development in how we're all going to keep connected going forward. But now it's my real pleasure to hand you over to John and Amar. Thank you both for joining us today, and we really look forward to listening to your conversation.
Thank you, Maureen, and Amar, it's so nice to see you and to eventually get here. We had intended to have this chat back in May, but it's a real pleasure to be able to speak with you today in the first of our new kind of season of QPS Talk Time. So you're very, very welcome.
Thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, super. I suppose I've been aware of your work, Amar, and the work of the East London Foundation Trust for the last number of years. And so I'd like us to talk about that and I suppose how you as a group, as an organization, have put quality and safety and improvement at the center of what you do. But there's a few things maybe I'd like to maybe help our listeners know about you. So you're a consultant forensic psychiatrist. That's your clinical background. Would you just tell us a little bit about that, and what does a consultant forensic psychiatrist do?
Yeah, of course. We're still a relatively small professional group, although grown over the last 20, 30 years. Essentially, I'm a psychiatrist by training, so I support and work with people with severe and enduring mental illnesses. The forensic bit means that the group of people I support have also come into touch with the criminal justice system.
Mm.
So, by virtue of having a severe and enduring mental illness, sometimes that leads people into um, offending behaviors, and people I would support and see and assess and treat really have committed offences whilst being ill. So my role really is to assess the contribution of the illness to their offending behaviour, give evidence in court, support the person to receive treatment in prison if they stay in prison, or come to hospital for longer term treatment. And then, as I'm mostly based in the community, my role is really to help people move on in life and to recover and to reduce the risks of reoffending in the future. So it's a nice blend of mental health work and law.
Yeah, yeah, and really across the whole spectrum of life as well, isn't it? I mean, from the health services and into the community. And was improvement something you got interested in your training, or when did you kind of start to kind of think this would be something that would go well with this specialty?
I don't know that there's a connection between being a forensic psychiatrist and being an improver. I guess, one of my real bugbears is that, through all of my years of training, many years of undergraduate, postgraduate training, I never really came across quality improvement, not even once. And it feels now like a really obvious omission that we don't skill up our clinicians to understand the complex systems in which they work, and then think about how they might influence those systems to improve outcomes for people. We do a lot of spend a lot of time thinking about the patient to clinician relationship and interaction and diagnosis and treatment, and less about the system in which we work, which actually has such an impact on how effective we can be. So I didn't come upon it until really towards the end of my training.
Yeah.
And I took a year out of training and worked with the National Patient Safety Agency in England and Wales, as it was then. It closed down later, but it was my first foray into the patient safety world, and started to hear about quality improvement being applied. And when I came back to training, I knew I probably wasn't ever going to be a full-time clinician, because part of me had sort of felt that desire to work at system level. And so I've only really ever been a part-time clinician and part-time improver since then. And as it happens, when I finished my training, the medical director at the National Patient Safety Agency had by then become the medical director at this trust.
Okay.
In the context of, 2 or 3 really severe safety incidents. So, a lot of the time, organizations have some sort of wake-up call, whether it's around quality and safety, whether it's around finance, but it makes them think about the way in which they lead and their operating model and their mental model, really, about how they want to approach quality. And for East London Foundation Trust, it was on the back of a number of really severe safety incidents in 2010, 2011. And so when Kevin and I joined in 2012, it was with the intent of doing something different around quality, because by then it really helped the organization sit up and look around for the first time, probably, at how do the highest performing healthcare systems in the world do it, because we were clearly missing something. And I wasn't particularly skilled in quality improvement at that time, but that was the beginning of my learning. In fact, a lot of what I've really been applying comes from outside the healthcare system completely. I've spent 20 years working in the charitable voluntary sector, and I think a lot of the skills there around mobilizing people, community action, working with a range of stakeholders, communicating effectively, I think those were honed outside of health, to be honest, and have been much more helpful to me in this work.
And would you just tell me a little bit about East London Foundation Trust then, even just to place it for us, and how big is it? I mean, what's the population that it looks after? Tell us a little bit about it.
We're a healthcare provider in East London, but also now outside of London completely, in Bedfordshire and Luton, which is north of London, and slightly more rural areas in Bedfordshire. We provide mental health, community health, primary care, and specialist services. We have about 6,500 staff dispersed across around 350 teams in 150 locations, turnover of around $500 million, and we serve a population of close to 2 million people now. So that sort of describes who we are as an organization. And we're a foundation trust, which means we have a little bit more autonomy to be able to manage our own longer term planning around finances. But we're much more accountable through the foundation trust structure to our local citizens and members who come from the places in which we serve.
And what do you think makes East London Foundation Trust different in terms of how it operates compared to another trust or another foundation trust in the UK? What distinguishes it? Why have people become interested in what you do?
I don't think we were particularly different 10 years ago. I think we were pretty under the radar. No one really paid attention to us or had heard of us. We weren't particularly known for quality and safety, but we weren't in any major difficulties, I would say, at that time. What we did agree to do back in 2012-13 as a board was to adopt a different approach to quality, one that fundamentally shifted the balance of power in the organization to be much more in the hands of our service users and our staff at the point of care. So really it was a fundamental change in our approach to running the organization, to say actually the best people to decide what needs improving and how to improve it are not the most senior people in the organization. Actually, we need to create an environment in which our teams and our staff and our service users have the power, they have the tools, they have the support in which they can make change happen. Sounds simple, but it actually runs counter to decades of command and control and hierarchical structures in probably the most bureaucratic system in the world, in the NHS. So it's still an endeavor that we're persevering at, and we've made some inroads to it, but it comes really from starting something that felt a little bit different and a bit risky 10 years ago, giving it a go, learning how to do it, being open with what we learn with others, and actually telling the stories and building belief gradually that the way to solve complex problems is not that I as a leader need to have the answers. Actually, that's quite freeing in a sense now, to know that my role is not to have the answers for every challenge we face, but actually to enable the team closest to the issue to feel like they have my support to understand the system and then improve the system. And that's I think what we've been working towards for the last 8 or 9 years now.
And what are the key steps, do you think, in that journey? And even to think about it, is there a way of describing it from the board end of things right down to what everybody working in the organization needs to do differently?
Yeah, I don't think we've cracked this at all, John, but a few of our interesting areas where we've learned something along the way have been it does need a different approach at the board. If the most senior group is not fully signed up to this and doesn't believe it and doesn't think about how it's going to behave differently to enable this culture to take place, it's really not going to survive. So we spent about 18 months right at the beginning just working with our board to help them think, what would it mean to become the board of a quality improving organization rather than a quality assuring organization, which we used to be. And we now operate very differently to how we used to. But it also needs us to equip people with the skills they need to understand the system, systems thinking really, and know how to improve it using a common method, which becomes our language really for how to improve. Nobody really knew that 8 or 9 years ago. I certainly didn't. So we've had to all learn this together. And it needs us to then make sure that the enabling environment is there so that when people spot a problem, they're encouraged to take the time to reflect on it, bring people together, understand it, and then apply a systematic approach to it rather than sort of quick fixes. Really think about sustainable long-term solutions, and that's about leadership behavior. So I would say a lot of this is about really reinforcing over time that this is the approach we're going to take. It's got to be owned by a large consensus across the leadership group. It can't just be owned by one person. And it takes a long time to really reinforce and convince people and persuade people that this represents a better approach to solving some of our most complex problems than the old way.
Yeah, and you know, what are the things that have helped you, I suppose, on that journey in terms of, you know, I would kind of advise anybody watching today to check out your website and the wonderful resources you have there. I think that have been clearly, you know, developed with a lot of thought. And one of the things that is so appealing about them is how engaging they are, and in one sense, how simple they are to access.
Yeah, I think that some of the things that have really been helpful to us has been the generosity of people. Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, but you know, everyone has been so willing to give it a go, particularly in the early days when it was still a bit unknown, hadn't been applied much in our field of mental health and community health and primary care. But people have come to work in the health system with a desire to do the best they possibly can, and that's our greatest asset. So actually, probably the biggest enabler to this all has been people's willingness and generosity with their creativity and their ideas and their time to try and make things better. And that includes our service users who are integral to our approach to improving things, right at the center of what we improve, and then right at the center of how we go about improving things. But it's been a privilege really to have an opportunity and the leadership support in this organization to really think about how we do things differently, and how we take people with us on this quite a long-term journey that we've undertaken.
And that idea of sharing power throughout the organization, you know, how does that happen on a practical basis? How do you involve staff in those decisions about how we're going to do things differently, or more importantly, how do you get patients to really have a contribution into that?
By trying things, John, and by learning as much from the times when it doesn't go well as from the times when it does go well. It's not easy always, actually. We're still a long way from where we want to be, which is for all of our improvement work to be truly co-produced in an authentic, genuine way. We're still a long way from that, but we've made progress. And it has to start somewhere. You probably want to start with the willing, start where there's energy and some urgency to do something, and some people willing to make a difference, and go from there, and just be really systematic about applying the method in a rigorous way, learning as you go, sharing the learning, and then using those stories to bring others along with you on the journey. And you know, we began with a tiny little infrastructure, you know, literally 2 people who were just building this little engine, and a group of interested staff and service users right at the start who said, right, well, we're willing to step up and give it a go first. And you just start from there and build as you go. You know, we're a long way down the road now. And I guess over that time, what we've learned is this is only really going to last if you integrate it. Can't sit as some separate activity run by QI over here while the rest of the organization just carries on as normal. It's got to be fully embedded into the way we work. And so ensuring that improvement is part of your management system is absolutely core to this. So it's one part of the management system. It's not seen as sort of the answer to everything. And that's something we've learned along the way. You know, where are the best ways and places in which to use QI, and where is it probably not the best solution? You know, really understanding what makes a complex or wicked problem, and really deploying our limited time and energy for QI in those places. And then how does that fit alongside assurance? We still need assurance. You know, at the beginning, probably we dropped our assurance work down a little bit too far to make space for improvement. And now we've had to rebalance that over time, because assurance serves an important role for us and for our citizens. And how does that fit alongside really strong and robust quality control systems, so that teams have ownership of the way they function and perform day to day? They can take corrective actions as they need, they can escalate for support. And then how does all of that wrap around some really good planning, so that we know where we're heading from at every level of the organization, and we have a mechanism to feed our plans into improvement work. So that's, you know, the essence of what we would call our quality management system. It's just the way we work, really. And it takes a long time for that to really be owned and believed by everybody. But I would say, you know, my role is to make sure that our chief finance officer, our chief people officer, our chief operating officer, all have the same mindset in their day-to-day work. That when they face challenges or come upon things that need to be solved, that they apply the same mindset to it.
And are there examples, Amar, of things that you have changed as an organization that maybe were difficult problems before, or problems that people were struggling, you know, that this new way of working and being is helping kind of to address? Or are there examples of things that have, you know, made a difference for patients and families and staff?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when we began this, I'll give you a couple of examples, John. When we began in 2013, and we were just looking for teams that just wanted to give it a go. One team came forward and said, "Look, thing we really want to solve is physical violence on our ward, because it is the biggest issue for us. It's our #1 reported safety incident. It stops people from recovering well on the ward. It has an impact on staff. People are off sick. People don't want to come into work because they're too scared." And actually, that was a really tough thing to choose to work on, because the evidence base was slim. It's not clear what we should be doing from the research to predict and prevent violence. But you know, Globe Ward and Tower Hamlets led the way, and you know, they by coming up with their own ideas involving their patients and stakeholders, they came up with some ideas. They tested them out. They saw violence reduced by about 60% on their ward, which is still sustained to this day. And we've gradually scaled that up, you know, taking it from one ward all the way across 50 wards. So now our levels of violence are 30% lower than they were 7 or 8 years ago. And I think that's a phenomenal achievement, given the change in the acuity that we see on the wards, and the reduction in beds that we've seen over the same period. It's still amazing to see that we're able to hold on to practices that help us predict and be more proactive, rather than having to respond after an incident's taken place. That's an example. And another one, which I think is really important now, is around how long people wait to be seen in community teams. In 2015-16, we, you know, if we'd have said to our teams, we'd love you to see more people, we want to see them quicker, and we'd like you to make sure they come to their appointments, you know, they would just have said to us, well, we can't do that without more staff. You know, we just can't do it without more resource. And yet, with the invitation of quality improvement, teams have voluntarily come forward to say, this is something we know we need to fix, and we're going to use our improvement tools to help us with it. And we've seen some amazing results. Even right now, with the backlogs and waits we're seeing in the pandemic, teams are applying their QI to that. And again, that's a fantastic thing to see, that people aren't just putting their hands up and saying, we can't solve this, we need someone else to come in and give us more resource. Actually, there are things we can do, and we have some control over the system. Maybe not every factor, but there's a large part of the system that we do have influence over. And I think now what I'm really heartened by is our teams are now using their QI on some of the most challenging things. You know, we've got team. There was a team last night, for example, that was shortlisted for one of the patient safety awards for their work on sexual violence in inpatient settings, a topic that would probably not even have been spoken about a couple of years ago. We've got another ward that's been nominated for its work on racism, reducing racism on a personality disorder ward, using quality improvement. And lots of teams have used QI to help them navigate the challenges of the pandemic. So that, for me, is really gratifying, that people are now finding QI to be helpful for them in being agile, being responsive to what is a really difficult, unpredictable environment, but also tackling the really hard stuff, the stuff that is often really difficult to even talk about.
And what you're talking about there, to me, sounds like, you know, the what matters to me for both patients and for staff. I imagine these things, you know, really help people to feel that they're making the changes they want to see happen.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my one tip to people is it's too easy with QI work, particularly when, you know, leaders and boards start to pay attention to it and start owning it, that actually it becomes a top-down thing, that, oh, we really want to make sure QI fixes the things that the board's interested in. And one of our core principles has always been in our QI work that teams choose what they work on, and nobody tells a team what to do, with what to fix using QI. It's for the team to have a conversation and to with not just with their staff, but with their patients too, and say, right, what really are we doing really well as a service, and where do we think we need to improve? And let's together do that, all together. I mean, all care is delivered as a team. And one of our principles is, we improve as a team, and we do it around what really matters to that team of patients and staff. I think that that really resonates with people, that they have freedom to identify the things that matter to them about the service, and to use this to help make a difference. And actually what we find is that resonates completely with what the board also cares about.
Yeah, and I think we all agree that quality is everybody's job, but in terms of the infrastructure, that supports that quality, how does East London Foundation Trust do that? What are the what do the QI supports look like in terms of close to the front line, or a project, or how do you support everybody to do this work? Are there people who have specific roles in facilitating QI projects and coaching, or helping kind of move things along, taking barriers out of the way?
Yeah, I think that's really important, John. Teams are trying to work their way through really complex problems that we haven't found the solutions to, so they're going to need support and help with it. And actually, if we say to teams that we want you to help us solve these problems, it's our role to make sure they're supported with it. And this is something we've had to develop over time. When we began, there were literally 2 or 3 of us in a very small central team that were trying to get this program going, support teams directly. We realized quite quickly that wasn't going to work in the long run. So we've developed what is still our infrastructure, where most of the support for teams comes locally, comes from a cohort of improvement coaches. We developed the improvement coaching program with the IHI back in 2015-16 because we recognized there was a gap there. And we wanted to skill people up so that they don't have to be full-time improvers. They can just take on coaching as a part of their role. Most of our 100 coaches just give up 2 or 3 hours a week to coach a team in their local area with their improvement work. And we've trained up now 6 cohorts of those coaches over the last 6 years. And we've also built our central resource too, so that we have a team of improvement advisors in our central team who support the coaches, but also do our teaching across the organization, continuing to build skills across the organization, but also build and design some of the large scale improvement work. So where we have multiple teams working on something, like at the moment on flow or on staff wellbeing, we run large programs which bring all those teams together, and that's the role of the central corporate team. So I suppose it's an infrastructure that is as local as possible, because you want teams to feel like they can access help quickly and easily, but also with some real expertise as local as possible. So they're really skilled improvement coaches with access to people in our central team who can guide and support them. So that's the infrastructure as it looks now, with a website which helps us share learning, with training resources, with a really big focus on identifying and telling stories, because I think that's a really effective way to continue to motivate and inspire people that this work makes a difference.
And do you teach people about stories? I mean, is that something you try and encourage and bring forward?
We do, yeah. Some people assume that storytelling isn't for them, but there's so many different ways in which you can tell a story. And actually, the first step in that is just to stop and pause and think about the impact of a piece of work. So we build storytelling into all of our training, as an example, but also our network across our improvement advisors and improvement coaches is always looking for nuggets of stories. They don't have to be fully completed projects. It could just be, we've chosen to do this piece of work, and why is that important for us? That could be a really powerful story in itself. So we're always looking to help people tell their story. And actually the most powerful ways is for people to do it peer to peer.
Yeah.
So we're looking to find, encourage places where people can tell stories and help people package their story so that they can articulate it clearly, and do it in a variety of creative ways. You'll see from our website, we're quite a creative organization. So we like poems and videos and artwork, and we would like people to be able to express themselves in whatever way they wish.
And that's fun as well, isn't it? And I know a concept you're very fond of, and I really believe in it too, is the idea of joy at work, and that you know, that you can you know, you should be fulfilled by your work, and that I think QI is one of the things that allows people to, you know, maybe scratch the itches that work gives you, and the difficulties, the things that get in the way of having joy there.
Yeah, that's so true, John. I mean, when we started introducing QI, we saw a step change in the staff experience at work. Very noticeable change from 2014 onwards. And yet we have variation. So, you know, part of our approach to tackling the variation in people's experience and the joy they experience at work is, again, through QI. So for the last 4 years now, we've been applying the joy in work framework and supporting teams to really come together and think, what is it about the way we work that brings us the most joy, the most connection to the meaning in our work, and what gets in the way of that, and what could we do differently? QI is not difficult at its essence. It's really simple, and part of the skill of being an improver is about keeping it simple and connecting people with the purpose.
You mentioned IHI there, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, and obviously, you know, I think most people listening today will be familiar with the work of IHI, but how valuable has it been to have a partner, you know, someone to help you on your journey and maybe encourage you as an organization or challenge you as an organization?
It's been invaluable, John, I have to say. I really don't think we would be where we are now without a trusted partner like the IHI. They have guided us every step of the way, been alongside us on this journey. I mean, obviously, they're not around as much as they were in the early days now, where we needed them on site a lot more to help teach and to help guide us much more closely, but they're still invaluable partners. In fact, you know, every couple of months we have a session with them as a leadership team, so that we can still gain their insight and wisdom to help us with some of our challenges. They're still on site with us once a year for an annual visit, so they get to see the work and meet our teams, and it's a really energizing, important point in our year so that we can get their reflections on how we can keep improving the way we improve. So I think without a partner, we would have struggled to get going. And I think, you know, looking back to 2013, when I was thinking about how we would design this work, you couldn't get support for this from a lot of places. I think one of the really great things is that landscape has changed immensely now. There are so many trusts on this journey, so many healthcare providers on this journey, so many places you can get support now. Maybe we don't need to all get it from the IHI, but we need to find ways to make sure we can have safe spaces where we can share some of our challenges, get some wisdom and insight to help us think about how we're approaching them and be able to learn from others. And that's really what we found so useful from the IHI.
And who are you looking to now for ideas, just in terms of who's inspiring you now, you know, in terms of organizations in the UK or even further afield? Are there places that you see, you know, they're doing stuff that's really interesting, that's pushing things out?
There's a lot of places we still look to learn from on different aspects. So there's plenty of things that we need to improve still. One is our data infrastructure. You know, the thirst for data has grown, and our data infrastructure hasn't kept up with that. So we're looking to learn from the very best, and there are places like Intermountain and others where that is such a good place to learn from. And then there are places that are even further down this road than us. Places like Cincinnati Children's, which, you know, have been applying QI in profound ways, and I still get a lot of learning from them. And now there are, you know, lots of places that are applying QI to some of our most complex societal challenges. I'd look at Community Solutions in the US and the work they're doing to end homelessness across the US using quality improvement in a really rigorous, robust way. There are places around the world that we still learn a lot from.
Yeah, I love that Cincinnati idea of when they realized, you know, they weren't the best. I think there was a commitment to be the best at getting better, which I think is a wonderful way of looking at the world. Obviously, we've come through COVID and all of the challenges of it. Do you think the QI foundations that you have at East London Foundation Trust changed the way you came through COVID, or how you were able to respond to it?
I think so. I like to think so, John. I like to think not just about QI, but also our belief around involving people who use our services in helping us design and improve them has also helped us during this time. So, holding true to co-production, holding true to improvement is something we've been paying a lot of attention to as a leadership team over the last 18 months. Lots of examples of ways and places in which teams have fallen back on their QI knowledge and skills to help them. And as a QI infrastructure, we've tried to be as useful as we possibly can be to the system. And I know in a lot of trusts, people have actually have been redeployed from QI to fulfill more urgent operational functions. And thankfully, we haven't had to do that. And we've been able to make sure that our QI support has helped the organization think and find solutions in a systematic way. And actually, I'm proud of that. And being able to use improvement to really think about learning and redesign for the future. We had 1,500 people involved in a series of 50 workshops at the end of last year to help us really capture learning and think, what do we need to be in the future? How does our service need to change based on the learning from the pandemic? And that's a systematic approach to organizational learning that we've really tried to hold true to. So I think it has, but it's also shown us what variation exists in belief. Where people haven't believed in QI, I think that's also been shown. And we probably knew that before, but it's been more obvious over the last 18 months that there is still work to do.
And just finally, I suppose one of the hats you're wearing is a national hat then as well. Would you just tell us a little bit about that? So you're the national lead for improvement within mental health, is that right?
Yeah, through the Royal College of Psychiatrists, which is again a real privilege to have that opportunity, and a great sign that for the first time in England, we've been given the opportunity to apply QI to solve some of the biggest quality and safety issues in mental health. Whereas previously we might have just relied on statute or policy or guidance issued nationally and then just disseminated. Actually, we've been able to apply a rigorous QI approach to things like restrictive practice, things like sexual safety, things like suicide prevention, now working on staff well-being and joy in work on a national level. Through the team I work with at the National Collaborating Centre for Mental Health in the Royal College of Psychiatrists, where we've got another team of improvement coaches who guide and support that work. So again, it's a real great step that we can see people wanting to apply QI in a different scale now.
Wonderful. Yeah, and what the stories you must be collecting along the way. I think we unfortunately we don't have time to hear them all, but I'd love to hear them again sometime. Amar, there's some questions in the chat. If you don't mind, we might just have a look at one from Therese there just asking about pocket QI. Is that something that East London Foundation Trust has developed?
Yeah, back in the early days, we were thinking, how do we just give people just enough so that they can have enough QI in their pocket that they can get involved straight away.
Yeah.
And so that's where Pocket QI came from. It's something that we developed and we're proud of it and we've iterated it over time, but it's basically our introductory level of QI. We've been doing it virtually for the last 18 months, but we've trained maybe 3,000 people through that now. And it's 2 half days, fun, lots of exercises. It gives people the essentials. And you can find it on our website.
And it's like giving people the language, and the ideas to work with, and yeah, super. A couple of other ones there, just QI syllabus for nursing and medical students during their postgrad. Do you have QI syllabuses, or do you, from an educational point of view, do you get down to that kind of level of detail? And
we have learning objectives, and for the programs we run. But I think what Nirmal is probably talking about is the work we're doing with the universities for nursing students and medical students. And I think it's fair to say we've got a bit further with our nursing than we have with medics so far. So there is some elementary QI now in the medical curriculum, but it's still very elementary. It's not experiential, and you will all know that the theory of QI is simple. It's when you apply it that the real magic happens and where some of the most learning is. So the nursing curriculum has both theory and practical application. So when they're with us for their placements, they get involved in QI work, as do our psychology trainees now. So we've managed to go upstream a bit to get to undergraduates and postgraduates before they even become employees now.
Yeah,
which is great.
Do you try and train people cross-disciplinary together? I mean, that's something when you can do it, I found it incredibly valuable.
I think that's the only way we want to do it, to be honest, because and actually there was some challenge about that in the early days, that we want to be trained by ourselves because we're a little bit different and our needs might be different, but actually there's a lot of learning from doing this together, and seeing the value that different professions bring to this kind of work. So all of our training is multidisciplinary and involves patients too.
So some nice comments there, just from Anya. Really likes the statement that teams choose what they want to work on, and yeah, I think we all agree with that.
Amar, thank you. I think the gremlins have whisked John away. Apologies for that. So I think he might be back with us shortly.
I'm back there if you're.
Thanks, John. Lovely to see you again.
Sorry, we just had a power outage here, so my Wi-Fi went. Are you there, Amar? Can you hear me still?
I'm still here.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem.
So look, I think we're probably close to finishing up anyway, Maureen, aren't we? I think it's been a real pleasure, Amar. Thank you so much. You can see yourself there. There's been lots of really nice comments and loads of very thoughtful questions. And if there's anything there that we can maybe respond directly to the questioners, we will. But I think I just want to thank you for your time and your patience in sticking with us to get here, but it's really been worth it, and thank you for sharing the learning and wisdom of East London Foundation Trust, and thank you for giving us your stories. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for inviting me. And the final message to everyone is stay true to improvement. Obviously committed improvers listening in today, know that you're part of a large movement across the world. Stay connected and let's support each other to make a difference.
Thank you, Amar, and thank you, John, for sharing such a rich conversation. Starting with the willing, integrating improvement so it's fully embedded, the way we work, teams choosing what they work on, freedom to identify the things that matter to them and people who access our services. And I really love the insight. Theory is simple. It's when you apply it, you have the magic. So many things for us to take away and think about. So on behalf of the almost 70 people who joined us for our conversation today, thank you both. And thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you to Matthew, who shared at the start our Q network map, a way of keeping all of us joined together. A little reminder and a plug that we are a partner country of Q, which is the community that keeps people who are leading improvement connected across England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. Caroline Lennon-Allen, my colleague, coordinates membership in Ireland, and her details are on the slide, and she's delighted to talk to anybody who's interested in becoming a member. So as we draw to a close today, to remind you, this QPS Talk Time series happens on a Tuesday lunchtime. We have a series between now and Christmas. We have a small little break until the 12th of October, when we have our next Talk Time session. And we're looking forward to welcoming Dr. Kieran Walsh from BMJ and members of our library community in Ireland, who are going to share with us clinical decision support and quality improvement, the challenge of comorbidities. This session today is being recorded, So thank you to Naomi and colleagues. You'll be able to shortly access it on our YouTube channel. We're really interested in the spirit of QI, in you letting us know how we did today. So there's short questions will pop up as you log out. So we ask you just to pause a minute and fill in the very brief questions. We really appreciate your feedback. Thank you all. Now time for lunch and getting back to the busyness of the day.